Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
Assalamu Alaikum WW. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آج کل حضرت عمر رضی اللہ عنہ کا ذکر
Nowadays,
چل رہا
I
ہے.
am mentioning with reference to Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. I will continue in this relation today as well. Hazrat Muslim Ahmad, second worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, says, we find in a narration with regards to Hazrat Umar that when, in accordance to one of the commandments of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he exiled the Jews from Yemen, he did not capture or seize their lands. In fact, he purchased them. Hazrat Muslim Maud says further that the land of Yemen, which belonged to the Christians and the Jews, but when Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, purchased it from the Jews and the Christians and exiled them from the Arab Peninsula, then despite the fact that that land was of a certain price, he did not, although it belonged to the government, because they had seized the land, he did not just simply seize it. He in fact purchased it. It is mentioned in the hadith that Yahya bin Abi Sa'idin, Anna Amara, Ajala Ahala Najrana wal Yahuda wal Nasara wa ishtara bil arzihim wa quruhum. That Yahya bin Sa'id narrates that Hazrat Umar to the polytheists of Najran and the Jews and the Christians, exiled them from that area and purchased their land. We can say that the land of the Jews did not as such belong to the Muslims, so there was no question of having to purchase it as such. So most certainly that land belonged to the central government. But Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, despite this, by declaring it the government as the owner of that land, did not say that automatically that land should come into the possession of the government. Rather, he purchased it. Other people may give a contrary argument and say that this actually should not be the right way, but actually this would be contrary to the Islamic teachings. Islam only has the land which belongs to its national government, or such land which was actually not being used and there is no owner of that land, would they take that land. Therefore, the polytheists, the Christians and the Jewish people to the lands of the Najran, when they were exiled, that land became into the possession of the Muslims. The polytheists, the Christians and the Jews to that land. The fact is that Hazrat Umar gave that land or paid the owners of that land and purchased it from them despite this fact. Apart from the prisoners of war in Islam, mentioning this fact, Hazrat Muslim Maud, may Allah be pleased with him, says, Allah the Almighty says, Turiduna arda dunya, that O Muslims, that you should increase your might by seizing the land unjustly. Wallahu yuridu yuridul akhirah. That Allah the Almighty desires this not, that you should fall behind the world. In fact, what He desires is that you should follow those commands which will be better for you and give you a better end, and will gain you the pleasure and contentment of Allah the Almighty in the hereafter. And in order to gain the pleasure of Allah the Almighty, this command is better for you, that apart from prisoners of war who are seized during battles, you should not make anyone else prisoners. Apart from prisoners of war, there is no other type of prisoners, and it is considered inappropriate. There is no other type of prisoners appropriate or permissible in Islam apart from prisoners of war. This was considered a strict commandment in the beginning of Islam, and during the time of the Caliphate of Hazrat Umar, once a delegation of Yemen came to Hazrat Umar. They complained that before Islam, we used to make people our servants and slaves, and we were independent tribes. We should be removed from this servitude. Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, responded, although this incident was prior to Islam, however, even then I will not remove this. If your point is established as true, then I will most certainly have you freed. However, contrary to this, Hazrat Muslim Maud says that nowadays, he gives a comparison, in Europe today, this was the teachings of Islam, upon which Hazrat Umar had made it act upon, or he reassured them that he would free them. But what happens in Europe today, says Hazrat Muslim Maud, in order to increase their trade, until the beginning of the 19th century and the end, they continued this slavery. Most certainly, we find in the history different aspects of slavery. But we do not find anything in the history of Islam. In Islam, there is no concept of using slaves to increase the national interest in trade. In the time of Hazrat Umar, there was a very severe famine. And there was severe famine all across Medina. When there was a strong wind, then the dust used to rise up. As a result, this year was called Amar Ramada. It was called the year of the dust. Aus bin Haris relates on the account of his father. The Amar Ramada, it was called this because there was no rain in the entire year. And this is why it became like the dark, because the ground became as if all blackened. Zam bin Hisham relates on the account of his father that in the 18th year after the migration, when people were returning from the pilgrimage, the Hajj, they had to face severe sufferings. There was a severe famine, the land was dry, and people started dying from hunger, until that people started drinking what they could from taking from different mice and rats and all sorts of bones and all sorts of things they could just to survive. Hazrat Umar relates, Hazrat Umar bin Khattab to Amr bin As in Amr bin Mada wrote a letter in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the ever merciful, from Allah's God's servant, the leader of the faithful, to As bin As. Peace be upon you. Do you want me and the others to die who are around me, whilst you remain alive, and those who are around you to remain alive? Is there anyone to assist or help? Hazrat Umar wrote 3 times, Madad, 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 help, help, help. In response to this, Amr bin As responded, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in his letter, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the ever merciful, Allah, apart from whom there is none worthy of worship. Help will arrive to you. Please wait a little bit. I am sending a caravan of camels. The first camel will come to you. That the line of camels will be so long that the front of it will reach you and the back of it will be still with me. Then another caravan of different provisions and food. Another companion sent another caravan of thousands of camels of food and clothes and butter and all sorts of different things. And another companion sent 2,000 camels filled with provisions and bags and clothes. When the first caravan arrived, or the bag or provision, then Hazrat Umar said to Zubair bin Awam, stop the caravan and go towards Ahle Badia, the people of Badia, the village. First give it to the village folk and distribute this amongst them. By God, it is possible blessing than this. Make some clothes from this, then sacrifice the camels to have meat from, and use their skin to make clothes from or covers from. Do not wait to say that we will wait for rain. Rather, they should cook flour from the flour, and they should collect together what the provisions they have until Allah the Almighty betters the situation. In other words, That is, what he was trying to say is they should eat, they should utilize the provisions, but they should store some as well for the future. So then it was announced publicly that whoever wants to be present for food, to eat food, they should most certainly do so. And whoever so desires that the food that is sent to them should be given to them, they should come and collect it. Hazrat Umar would take the type of half bread and put it in the broth and give it to other people. This had a type of other spice with it, which would be cooked with the bread. The camel would also be sacrificed and used for meat, and Hazrat Umar would eat whatever the other people would eat and eat with them. Abdullah bin Aslam relates on the account of his father that Hazrat Umar would regularly keep fast. In the evening, bread would be brought with him, which would be made from olive oil, or olive oil would be used with it. Then the camels would be sacrificed, and the meat would be fed to people. They kept the best portion to Hazrat Umar. When the best portion of the meat was brought to Hazrat Umar, then there were other types of food with it. Hazrat Umar said, "Where did this come from?" It was said that, "O leader of the faithful, this is from the camels which we sacrifice today." It was from the hump of the camel. Hazrat Umar said, "What a poor leader I will be if I eat the best portion of the meat and I only give the less quality portion of the meat to the people. Take away this part of the hump from the hump of the camel and bring some other part of food for me, or type of food." So then a type of flatbread was brought with olive oil, which had olive oil with it, and he said to his servant, "O Yafra, may whatever is best receive to you, take this plate of food to your home." So there was a place with dates with it, and the owner of that was Hazrat Umar. So he had dedicated this date orchard. He said, for 3 days, Hazrat Umar said, for 3 days I did not give them anything. And I think that they may have had empty stomachs. So present this to them. Hazrat Ibn Umar has narrated that on the days of the famine, Hazrat Umar began a new activity which he did not do before, which is that after leading the night prayer Isha, he would enter his home. And then, until the end of the night, he would continue his prayer. Then he would come out, and then he would tour the vicinity of Medina. In the morning, when the fast was beginning, in the morning, Sahri, I heard him say the following, that, "O Allah, do not allow the community of Muhammad to be ruined at my hands." Muhammad bin Yahya bin Abban narrates, in the days of the famine, once we brought Hazrat Umar some bread which had been dipped in some part of the meat, or the fat of the meat of the animal. So someone else who was there started eating the part of the fat of the meat very quickly, to which Hazrat Umar said, "You are eating as if somebody has never seen that part of the meat." And he said, "Certainly, for many days I have not eaten the type of butter or clarinated butter, or I have not eaten any type of meat." So the fact is that he had not eaten or seen anything like it, so he ate it very fast. Ibn Daus relates on the account of his father that Hazrat Umar neither ate meat nor the clarinated butter until the people themselves had been satiated, and only then. And because of this, because of not eating these things, his stomach would rumble in hunger. He addressed his stomach and said, "You can keep on showing your signs of hunger. I swear by God, I'm not going to give you anything else until everyone else has had their due of food." And they start eating in the way they used to eat. Ayaz bin Khalifa has narrated that on the day of the year of the famine, I saw Hazrat Umar. His face had blackened, whereas previously his face was of a fair complexion. And we asked, how did this happen? So the narrator explained to us, who was telling us this, Hazrat Umar was an Arab. He used to drink milk and a type of clarinated butter. When the famine arrived, he considered this not to clarified butter and bread and other things to be forbidden upon him. Hazrat Umar used to eat the food with oil and his complexion changed. And when he started eating other things like the clarified butter or ghee, then it's changed even further. Another companion narrates that we used to say that Allah the Almighty had brought the famine on, and if he did not remove the famine, then Hazrat Umar may pass away due to the way he was abstaining. Another companion said that on the day of the famine, people from all over came to Medina, although Umar had instructed that hospitality should be given to them and food given. Hazrat Umar had assigned companions in different parts of Medina who at a moment's notice would give him information. From morning to evening they would update Hazrat Umar, and they would bring him news or the latest update of the area. Bedouins had arrived in different parts of Medina. One night when the people had finished the food, Hazrat Umar has said, whoever ate at food with us at night, count them here. So they were also counted. So it was counted as 7,000 people. Then Hazrat Umar said, those who had not come, also count those and the sick and the ill. And then it was 40,000 in total. After a few days, they did a check of the numbers again. The people who ate food with Hazrat Umar was 10,000, and the rest of the people were 50,000. This continued in this way to increase until Allah the Almighty finally caused rain to descend. When the rain descended, I saw Hazrat Umar, says the narrator. He instructed his people that everyone should now have arrangements made to return to their place, and they should be given the provisions and bags of provisions with them. The narrator says that I saw that Hazrat Umar was personally coming to see off these people. So the situation increased. The people had come because of hunger and starving. They had all come into the city. They would be given food. The situation improved. The rain descended, and they could then cultivate the land and produce agriculture. So then Hazrat Umar said, return to your places and go and farm your lands. In the history of Tabri, with relation to the end of the famine, it is mentioned that a person saw a dream, with relation to which the Holy Prophet gave attention towards prayers. Hazrat Umar then announced to people that the prayer of the rain would be made. Hazrat Umar said the situation reached to its dire level of situation. Whichever person has the capability, they should understand that their tribulations will now come to an end. He wrote letters to the various governors and said that for the people of Medina, he wrote to the different governors, the different areas, that for the people of Medina and for the servants of God, read the prayer of istisqa, the prayer of rain, because the tribulation has reached to the extreme. Hazrat Umar for the prayer of the rain, and he brought Hazrat Abbas. He read a short sermon, and then he said a small sermon, and then he started praying, Allahumma iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Allahumma ighfir lana warhamna wa arza'anna. Oh Allah, we pray for only to you, and we seek help only from you. O Allah, forgive us, have mercy upon us, and have contentment upon our actions. After this he returned. He had not yet arrived to his house when the rain descended so fiercely or so strongly that the land started flooding. Once Hazrat Umar started praying that, O Allah, your Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, in his era, when there used to be a famine, we used to pray by virtue of the Prophet for rain, and then you used to cause the rain to descend. Today, we are saying with reference to the uncle of the Prophet for the rain to descend, so end this famine and call the rain to descend. Subsequently, the people had not yet moved away from their position of prayer when the rain started to descend. Abdullah bin Ibrahim, in the Prophet's mosque, Masjid Nabwi, it is mentioned that when this situation started praying upon the mats, and there used to be dust and mud, but then afterwards there was prayer mats placed. Abdullah bin Ibrahim narrates that first of all, in Masjid Nabwi, the Prophet's mosque, the person who led the prayer mat was Abdullah Umar bin Khattab. Before, when people got up from the prostration, they would have to brush off the dust. So therefore he instructed for the prayer mat to be placed, which was brought from a certain area. It was laid down in the Prophet's mosque. Atiq is a valley in the south of Medina until one part of the north, and it is about 150 kilometers of valleys. In the time of Hazrat Umar, in the 17th year after the migration, the Masjid Nabwi, the Prophet's mosque, was extended. A companion has narrated that in the period of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, the mosque was made of mud and bricks, and there was also straw and other things, as well as the pillars made from a part of the date palm. Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq left this mosque in this situation and did not make any extension or renovations to it. Hazrat Umar, for its renovation and reconstruction, also made it, but he did not make any change to its original foundations. He also extended it based on the same way it was before. The roof was still made from parts of the date palms, and he only changed the pillars to be made of wood. Hazrat Umar, in the 70th year after the migration, he completed this renovation. After this extension, the mosque was now 100 by 100 by 50 by 50 square meters. So it is about 60 meters in different ways. From here we come to know that during the time of Hazrat Abu Bakr, in the time of Hazrat Abu Bakr, the mosque remained the same size at the time of the Holy Prophet, but in the time of Hazrat Umar, the mosque was extended quite a lot. Abu Sa'id Qudri has narrated that Hazrat Umar had instructed that the mosque of the Prophet should be renovated, and there should be provisions made to protect them from the rain and to cover them from it. Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, so this was the cubit meter, and during the time of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, at the time of Hazrat Umar, when he was renovating the mosque, he had to try to purchase some of the houses which were in the south, in the west, and also in the north. They were surrounding the mosque, and he had to purchase them in order to do the extension. There were some people who immediately gave over their land for the mosque, and for some people, Hazrat Umar had to use the way of offering to purchase the land. So some of the land around the mosque needed for extension he had to purchase, and some he was given it. In the time of Hazrat Umar, the census was also regularly taking place, or he had it done. And there was also a rationing system for provisions that was also established. In this regard, Hazrat Muslim Maud, second worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, has written, in this light, that how the system of the Islam was made and what changes and new innovations that were started in terms of administrative system. He writes, the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, the first task he did when he came, he made people who had property brothers of the people who had property. The Ansar owned property, and the Muhajirs did not own property. So the residents of Medina had property, the migrants did not have Medina. Medina did not have property. So he formed a brotherhood between these two parties. So he joined the people with property with the people who had no property. So leaving aside the wealth, some people were so open-hearted in this brotherhood that people who had two wives even offered to divorce one of their wives and said, you can marry our other wife. This was the first example of mutual connection which the Holy Prophet established in this way, because the foundation of government was made in Medina. There was not a lot of wealth amongst the people who came, and so, some people did not have a lot of wealth, and so the rich was joined with the poor, or people were joined together in a way that everyone could have food. Then at a time of war, the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, also utilized this means. Although the nature of it was altered accordingly, that at the time of war, the Holy Prophet came to know that some people did not have anything left to eat, or if they had anything left to eat, it was very scarce, whilst other people had an abundance of provisions and food. Observing these disparity in circumstances, the Holy Prophet instructed, "Whoever has any provisions, bring it to me, and collect it together in one place." So subsequently, all the provisions were brought, and the Holy Prophet established a rationing system. So this was the same way that the point is that everyone should obtain food. So when everyone was able to eat independently without any issues, he allowed it to happen. But when there was a danger that some people were now becoming hungry and starving, he said, no, this can no longer continue. Everyone will get equal food and a rationing system would be established. This was done according to the circumstances of the time. This is not a philosophy of communism or socialism being established. It was the circumstances of the time. The companion said that upon this instruction of the Holy Prophet, we strictly adhered to it. That if we had even a date in our possession, we would think it completely wrong to even eat that. And we would not rest until we went and deposited it in the central store. This was the second example that the Holy Prophet showed in terms of administrative system. So until Prophet, wealth arrived. And Allah the Almighty opened up the treasury. Allah the Almighty also desired that there should also be an extension of the system after the Holy Prophet, so people do not say that this only occurred or this was only a speciality of the Holy Prophet's time. And nobody else can establish such a system or practice such a system. So when the treasury became filled with wealth, the old system was then practiced. But then Allah the Almighty made the means so that the system had to be recontinued. How did this happen? So the Holy Prophet established an example by way of Allah. And as arriving in Medina, the Ansar, the residents of Medina, presented their provisions and wealth to the Muhajirs, the migrants. The Muhajirs, the migrants, said, we do not want to take this. We want to work to earn our due and give you for it. So this was a desire from the migrants. The Ansar, the residents, never hesitated to hand over their properties and possessions. This is like a way of rationing. This is as if a government gives rationing to a citizen, but the citizen says, I do not want to give the ration. The point is, here the Ansar, the residents, gave it over. It's up to the other person to take it or not. So the Ansar, the residents, handed it over, but the migrants, whether they took it or not, the fact is the Holy Prophet established this approach to the extent that when the king of Bahrain became a Muslim, he instructed him that in your country, those people who do not have any land to get by, every single person should be given 4 dirhams or some part of provision so they do not starve. After this, the Muslims started gaining wealth. Because they were Muslims were only few in number and the wealth was very abundant, so there was no need to implement that governmental system as aforementioned, because all the needs were being fulfilled because there was wealth amongst the Muslims. The principle is that this approach or this rationing system would only be activated when the circumstances so demand, when the situation is of a dire circumstance. So as I had started, the point I would like to make in the beginning, but then there were other details that came in between. The actual point I wanted to mention, that the Holy Prophet, after his time, how was this system perpetuated? When the Holy Prophet passed away, and the Muslims started spreading in different vicinities of the land, then there were also non-Arabs who also came into it. The Arabs were all one united cultural identity and they had some links between one another. When Islam started spreading to other non-Arab countries and different other types of nations and nationalities came into Islam, it became very difficult to provide bread to all of them. Finally, Hazrat Umar implemented a census amongst everyone and implemented a rationing system. And under the Banu Umayyah, European historians also acknowledge that the first of all proper census of this type was carried out by Hazrat Umar, and they also say that this was the first national census did not do it in order to for the government to steal money from the citizens, but to give from the government to the citizens. Governments normally carry out national censuses so that the citizens can become sacrificial lambs, and you can squeeze every part of provision out of them and wealth. But Hazrat Umar did not carry out national censuses so that people become sacrificial lambs. Rather, he did it so that people can be given food, can be given provisions. He wanted to know how many people are there, how many people do I need to help and provide for. So after the national census, everyone was given provisions according to the system that was implemented, and according to the circumstances that remained, they would be given some amount of money. And this was done so meticulously, this system, that in the time of Hazrat Umar, when Syria was conquered, and from there olive oil started arriving of a great amount. Once he said to the people, everyone started getting olive oil. So he said to the people, from the use of olive, my stomach swells. So Hazrat Umar would also get some olive oil. So he said that when I use too much olive oil, my stomach starts to swell. If you permit, that I should instead from the national treasury purchase clarified butter or ghee for the same amount because olive oil is not good for my health. So this was the first step in which in Islam needs were fulfilled in this way in a structured manner. And naturally, when this system in a structured way is established, there is no need for any other administrative system, because the government is responsible for the needs of the entire country, their food, their water, their clothes, their education, the tending to the sick, the construction of homes for their living. All of this is under the responsibilities of the Islamic government. And if such needs are continuously fulfilled, then there is no need for anything else. The reason why people do this is because they say that when we can actually leave something behind for our children, but when the government is fulfilling these needs, then there is no need for anything of this sort to leave behind afterwards. Then Hazrat Muslim Ahmad mentions that people who came afterwards into Islam started saying that this is all based on the whims of the leader. Whether he wants to give, he wants to give. Whether he wants to not give, establish in the people of the other nations who came anew. This is why eventually it went towards kingship. So actually this system negates the need of insurance. There is no need for insurance as such if the system is implemented. So they provided for the bread and clothes of every person. So it is mentioned that Hazrat Umar in his time, when the administrative system was properly established and under the Islamic government, every individual and every citizen it became the responsibility of the government to provide bread and clothes, and they fulfilled this responsibility splendidly. Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, for this particular purpose, started the means of an established census. And all the people would be polled in this, even European historians, and I have mentioned this before, that Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, was the first census of this type, and he also established a means of registration for this. And the reason for this census was that so that everyone could be provided with bread. It was important for the government to come to know and acquire data and information that how many people are there in the country. Today it is stated that Soviet Russia has provided the means of food and clothes to this people, but this type of economic system was first established by Islam. And practically speaking, in the time of Hazrat Umar, every village, every town, every hamlet and every person of every area was counted in the census. Every person's wife, every person's children, the numbers, how many they were all counted in the census. And then for every single person, there was also a column that was made for provisions. so that even those who had less food would get by with enough food, and also those who had a lot of food themselves could get enough. It is mentioned in the history that Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, in the early period, in the decisions that he made, amongst them, he did not look at the children who had to drink milk. And this actually happened, as I mentioned in the previous sermon, that one night, Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, in order to find out the situation of the people, he secretly went on a visit. He heard some child crying from inside a tent. He stayed there, but he heard the child to keep on crying, and the mother was trying to make the child go asleep. After a duration, Hazrat Umar went inside the tent and said to the lady that, why do you not feed the child milk? How long has he been crying for? The lady did not recognize Hazrat Umar and thought it was a normal person. So she replied, you do not know? Umar has decided that the children of those who drink breast milk should not be given the provisions, and this is why I have stopped giving her milk, so that I can actually obtain provision from the central treasury. If the child cries, let it cry. It is upon Hazrat Umar who has created this instruction. So Hazrat Umar immediately went back, and with great sorrow he said on the way back, Umar, Umar, because of you, how many children are not able to drink milk? You are ruining them. All the sins of that is upon you. Saying that, he went to the store himself. He opened the door. There, he picked up a whole bundle of flour on his own shoulders or back. Someone offered to lift it up for him. He said, no, I will not let you. It is my fault, so I will take this burden myself. He went and gave him the flour to that lady himself. The next day, he said, the day that a child is born, from that day, there will be provisions given to them, because the mother gives her breast milk and she is in need of greater provisions than everyone else. And so in Islam, every citizen, in terms of their food, their accommodation, and their clothes, is a responsibility of the government. And Islam, first of all, established this principle. Now, other governments as well are trying to mimic this, but not fully. There are many families who are suffering, but the point is, the responsibility of clothes and provisions is the responsibility of the government. Before Islam, no other religion offered this approach. In the world, census are taken place in order to find out how many people should be taxed, or in order to recruit people for the army in conscription and see how many people can come. But in Islam, the first national census that was taken place by Hazrat Umar was taken place for the purpose so that all people should be given food and provisions. It was not given in order to tax people, or it was not given so that how many people can be recruited in the army. Rather, the census was taken place purely for the objective, in order to deliver to every single person the required food and clothing. There is no doubt whatsoever that one census also took place in the time of the Holy Prophet, but at that time, the Muslims had not yet acquired government. So the purpose of that census was only to know the numbers of the Muslims. The census that took place during the period, in the first time that took place during period of Islamic governance, took place during the period of Hazrat Umar. That took place so that every person could be given food and clothing. This is such an important matter through which peace can be established in the entire world. To merely say that just make a request, we will reflect upon it, every person's honor cannot tolerate such an approach. As is to say that simply give a request and we will process the request. People cannot sometimes tolerate this based on their self-honor. This is why Islam said food and clothing is a responsibility of the government. It will be given to a rich person or a poor. Whether he gives it to someone else or not, it is so that no one has to make the request. No one has to suffer the dishonor. In the time of Hazrat Umar, the provinces were made in the land. So one area was split into 8 provinces so that it could create ease in the administrative and systematic structure. 1 was Makkah, 2 was Medina, 3 was Syria, 4 was Basra, or 5 was Basra, 6 was Kufa, 7 was Egypt, and 8 was Palestine. This is how it was divided. Then the consultative body, the Shura, also was established in his time period. In the Majlis Shura, the consultative body, both those groups, the Muhajirin and Ansar, they were most certainly pillars of it and members of it, the residents of Medina and the migrants. The Ansar were formed on 2 tribes, the Aus and the Khazraj. From both of these clans, it was necessary for them to take part in this consultative body. Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Abdul Rahman bin Auf, Hazrat Maz bin Jabal, Hazrat Ubay bin Ka'b, Hazrat Zayd bin Sabit were all participants of it as mandatory members. It was a method of the consultative body that first someone would announce loud, As-salatu jamia. That first of all, everyone gathered together for the prayers. When people would gather together for the prayers, Hazrat Umar would go to the Masjid Nabawi, the Prophet's mosque, and offer 2 units or rakats of the prayer. After the prayer, he would stand upon the pulpit, the mimbar, and he would deliver a sermon and present general points of admonishment. And then there would be discussions and debates in the consultative body. This was well regarded. When there was a general or important matter, there was a gathering of the Ansar and the Muhajirin. The salary of the army, the provisions to be distributed, the trade, and various different other important matters of governance, all these different matters were discussed. These were presented in the consultative body and deliberated upon. The gathering of the consultative body sometimes had to be called and summoned on special situations. Then there was another body where daily routine matters were discussed and deliberated upon. This consultative body would always gather together in the Masjid Nabawi, the Prophet's mosque, and the companions would be a part of this consultative body. In terms of the provisions and the districts, the news and information that would come to the central caliphate, Hazrat Umar would present into that place, and then there would be deliberations upon it. And people's opinions and consultation would be taken upon the reports that would be received from the different provisions. Apart from the main members of the consultative body, the general population were also allowed to be a part of it as delegates. So normally people in the different provinces and cities, the governors would elect somebody to take part in the consultative body, and sometimes there would be elections that took place. Sometimes a leader would appoint somebody. In these 3 provinces, Hazrat Umar sent in one time, Hazrat Umar in 3 provinces said that people of their own will should send representatives who they thought would best represent them to take part in the consultative body. In terms of the appointment of the members of the body, so the Shura, the consultative body, would take place and all the members would have to vote upon it, and then it would be nominated and delegated upon. Sometimes in the provisions or in the districts, the leaders of it would be sent instructions that choose the person who is most capable to be a representative or a delegate. So Hazrat Umar then would appoint them as part of it. There's also wisdom in this, so that he also paid those people more who were appointed as the leaders of the provinces, because there was a wisdom in this, because if they had sufficient provisions themselves, they would be able to provide for others and would not consider greed. Hazrat Umar said, I have not sent the leaders in order to be extremely strict. In fact, I have sent them to be leaders, not to be harsh, but so that people follow you. You must fulfill the rights of the Muslims. Do not usurp their rights. Do not cause them humiliation. Do not unnecessarily punish them. In fact, fulfill their rights. Do not unnecessarily praise somebody so that they fall into disorder. Do not have your doors closed for the others so that the powerful do not consume the weak. Do not give yourself superiority over anyone, because this would be a disgrace upon others. Whoever was appointed as a leader, a pledge would be made that he would not climb upon a horse, he would not wear very special clothes, he would not eat fine flour, he would not have a courtier at his door, he would always have his door open for the needy. These guidance were for all the leaders, and it would be read out amongst the people. After appointing the leaders, if they found there would be extraordinary increase in their wealth, and then he could not audit it, then that wealth would be taken from him and put in the treasury if he could not justify how he gained that extraordinary amount without justification. So when any of these governors or leaders any complaint was justified, there would be change, but research would be done, and there was also a leader, but this would also apply to the workers. But in terms of the workers, this would also apply to them. If in terms of the workers as well, any complaints were made, it is mentioned in a narration, Hazrat Muslim relates regarding to it, that there is an incident with relation to Hazrat Umar, that the people of Kufa were very rebellious. And they always complained against their officers or officials that a certain leader has such and such shortcoming or flaw. Hazrat Umar would change the leader upon this, and he would send another official upon their request, and he would replace him with another official. Some people said to Hazrat Umar that this is not the correct way. You will keep on replacing leaders or governors of that area, and people will keep on complaining. Do not do this. Hazrat Umar said, I will keep on replacing the officials until the people of Kufa themselves tire. After a long time, when they kept on complaining in this way, Hazrat Umar said, now I will send to Kufa such a governor who will completely straighten them and fix them. He was a 19-year-old youngster. Hazrat Umar, in order to fix them, was a 19-year-old youth, Abdurrahman bin Abi Layla. That was his name. When the people of Kufa came to know this, that a 19-year-old youngster was going to be made as his governor, they said, come, let us all come and mock him. They were ready to mock him, the people of Kufa. They started bringing people who were 70 or 90 years old, people, all gathered them together because they were quite chivalrous. They said, let us get together with all the oldest people and welcome Abdurrahman with all the people who are 70, 80, 90 years old, and as a joke, question him, what is your age? When he will reply, we will really laugh and make fun of him and mock him, that this is the person who has become our governor. So according to this plan, they came a few miles out of the town to welcome this new governor. Abdurrahman bin Abi Layla was coming upon his donkey. All the people of Kufa were standing there on their ranks and lines. And in the formation, the first line was that of the elders. When Abdurrahman bin Abi Layla came near, the people asked, have you been appointed our governor? Abdurrahman, is that your name? And he responded, yes. Upon this, a very elderly person came forward and said, what is your age? Abdurrahman said, you can take estimate of my age by the fact that when the Holy Prophet to Osama bin Zaid made him the leader of 10,000 companions, in which Hazrat Abu Bakr and Umar were also present. Osama bin Zaid, his age at the time, I am 1 year older than him, who was appointed as a leader of Umar and Abu Bakr and of 10,000 people. Hearing this, all of them went behind. They all became embarrassed and retreated. And they said to one another that until this person stays here, how dare anyone speak to him? Otherwise he is going to finish us. So he remained the governor there for a very long period of time. And the people of Kufa never dared to object to him. Then another system that he set up after the conquests of Iraq and Syria, he also formed this system thing. When the land was taken, the system of taxes was also formed, and in an administrative way. And Hazrat Umar gave an instruction that the people of Arabs, where they have distributed amongst the land, they will not do any agriculture in the other lands. That is, the Arabs, They will not do agriculture in the non-Arab lands. They will not, and one of the benefits of this is that the experience of the local people, the Arabs were not familiar with it. That is, in every area in the non-Arab lands, everyone has their own way of agriculture. So it meant that the people who came from Arab lands, they will not perform agriculture, but the local people in those lands will do the agriculture. So first of all, the taxes were taken forcibly in the previous times, but Hazrat Umar softened this and took it in a very gentle way. At the time of taking the taxes, it was inquired that have you been any cruelty committed against you, and then the tax would be taken, and the opinions would be taken, and their honor would be regarded. For the expansion of the agriculture, Hazrat Umar said, whoever takes over these lands, he will be the owner of it, and there will be a time period of 3 years, and there was irrigation, and there was also work of other types to prepare the agriculture. And this was done so the agriculture could be improved, so various systematic ways of agriculture were introduced. These were some of the achievements. There will be more. Inshallah, I will continue to mention this. I would like to also make an announcement. It is this: Ahmadiyya Encyclopedia has been made. It's going to be launched today. This is a central department of Archive and Research Center who have made this. Sometime before, they started this work, and with the grace of the Almighty Allah, this website is now being made available for members of the community online. www.ahmadiypedia.org is the website. You can find it there through a search engine. The homepage will open where you can search. It has been made very simple for ease of use. Various books of the community, individuals or personalities of the community, and events and buildings, all of these things are available on this site. With every entry, the relevant websites, videos, and various other newspapers and links to other websites are also made available so that you can gain further information through it. One benefit of these links as well is that Jamaat Ahmadiyya's other websites can also benefit, and people can benefit from reading it, and people can benefit from other magazines and periodicals and websites. There's already a lot of information available, but on Ahmadiypedia there is also an option to contribute, where you can actually contribute to various different of the information. It is not that just they will put it themselves. Rather, once they contribute, it will go to the administration who will decide. And after research into the contribution that members of the public want to give to different entries, then it will be decided whether to give it. In this way, through the cooperation of different members of the community, this will become a mutual project. And inshallah, God willing, it will be useful for every Ahmadi. If somebody does not find the relevant information on the website, they can contact Ahmadiypedia, and these people can then, the administration of Ahmadiypedia can look for that information. So if somebody has certain information which is contrary to any information we have, then they should inform us of this so that after research we can then find ways to preserve that. And for the preparation of this website, the technical setup of it was the Central Department of IT has worked on this in a very excellent fashion, and they have done a lot of work, the Department of IT. And apart from their permanent workers, they also have volunteers who assisted. The Central Archive missionaries and volunteers also did a lot of work to get this ready. And this has been translated from Urdu to English, uploading, and they worked a great deal to make this happen. And they all work towards this website. May Allah the Almighty reward all of them. And after the Friday prayers, God willing, I will launch this.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر.
صلي على نبينا صلي على محمد صلي على نبينا صلي